Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in a new Elden Ring Things You Didn't Know episode. Today we're covering some interesting going-ons in the community, furthering some interesting Miquella lore that we've been looking at recently, and other interesting topics. So without any further ado, let's begin. So, for our first thing, I stand here in Farum Azula. I'm actually here in New Game Plus because I've just been fighting the Godskin duos. I've been circling them, putting them to sleep over and over and over, and watching for something. Because something recently happened in the community. Lil Aggie, a streamer and speedrunner, is doing randomizer runs. And within that, while they were fighting a random Godskin duo in the Erdtree Sanctuary, there was this that happened.
What the fuck was that? He woke him up?
They actually woke up one of the Godskins during their sleep using a sort of special, pretty unique roar animation that I've never seen before. To me, this does not look modded in any way. It looks like an actual animation, an actual thing they can do in the files of the game that they just don't seem to do in the live version. But it was War Penguin that replied to that saying, well, this actually happened to me while I was fighting in the Windmill Village. So there's actually one single Godskin there, an Acolyte. And as you can see in this clip, even from far away, he wakes up this allied NPC, one of the dancing villagers, from sleep at pretty respectable range as well. Now what you might think is that, okay, well, this is some modded thing, something being caused by the randomizer mod with Lil Aggie, but War Penguin claims this is a vanilla normal version of Elden Ring, current live version of Elden Ring, and it's happening there. So that's why I went and tested it. I put the duo to sleep next to each other a lot of times, and yeah, just circled and circled, waiting for it to happen. It never did. It didn't matter whether it was the big fat one that was awake and the thin one that was asleep, or the thin one that was awake and the fat one that was asleep, like we've seen in those two clips. It just never seemed to happen. So what's going on here? It's quite interesting that it seems to be something within the files of the game that's just not activating in certain versions of the game, perhaps. Could it be that at some point, maybe 1.08 or 1.07 even, they snuck this new ability into the Godskins to counter the main way you deal with the duo, which is of course putting one to sleep, which is really easy using a bow, obviously, with any build. Maybe they're gonna activate this for real, like in 1.09 or whenever the Shadow of Erdtree comes out. God help us if there's more Godskin duos in the DLC. I hope not. But yeah, this is something I've been seeing on my feed recently, a lot of people talking about it, so I went to test it and wanted to share it in this series. What do you guys think? What's going on here? Now moving on, we return of course to the Haligtree and the arena of Malenia, and also the original kind of wood womb of Miquella. This is because we have a follow-up comment from, well, quite a lot of you guys talking about this large version of the tree. Now, I am wearing Malenia's chest piece, and on the cape on the back of that chest piece is indeed that large Haligtree or something else. And then I'm also wearing Loretta's helm, the Royal Knight helm, which has this very unique and quite important tree design coming out of the helmet and even on the face mask itself. This ties back to the symbol of Miquella. If we take a look at it now, if I take my helmet off to have a proper look at it, it's kind of a small tree, a sort of thin branch sapling thing. Whereas the tree on my back right now, that's more of a wider, grander, fully grown out tree. It was Isaac Browning in the comments that highlighted the key difference between what is basically the sapling and the full grown tree of this Miquella faction that we've been looking into recently. The thing is, this isn't Malenia's symbol on the cape here. She has her own one that shows up during like phase 2 when she's in a goddess form. Isaac actually highlights that it occurs when she's summoning the rot incarnations that fight you at the same time as her. So that's not her symbol. This is definitely Miquella's. She's following Miquella. So we refer back to the concept of a divine Haligtree symbol, and now we can really look at like the context of who's actually casting which, the original sapling or the full-fleshed probable divine Haligtree. Of course we have Malenia's cape, but then we go back to say the demi-human queen caster that's somehow casting it for some reason. Then we look to Finley, who when she spawns in, she's actually doing that buff, and that appears to be the larger fully grown tree. According to Isaac, even the duo Clean Rot Knights in the abandoned cave fight, one of them can cast the same buff as the Finleys. So maybe it's the case that Malenia shared it with a couple like really trusted knights. Certainly Finley deserved it, maybe that other unknown one did. But it was Ranged Crusader in the comments that brought up Loretta's helmet. The silver helm of Loretta, a knight who served Miquella's Haligtree. Loretta, once a royal carrier knight, went on a journey in search of haven for the Albinaurics and determined that the Haligtree was their best chance for eventual salvation, so she joined up, and somehow she worked her way up the ranks to be quite a well-respected and high-tier Miquella knight, I guess, especially with the fact that she's got this helmet with what we are thinking is the Divine Haligtree growing out of it to show her status. Seems only certain ones had the Divine Haligtree, like Malenia, and Loretta clearly qualified. When we look at the cape and the helmet together, it's clearly the same thing. We also looked at, say, the tattoos you can place on your character in the creator. We did see that kind of Divine Haligtree there as well. So what do you guys think? Is this the cast symbol of the real Divine Haligtree? Could we be seeing this cast symbol a lot more in the DLC? It's going to be interesting to see, and man, some really great research and comments about this topic through the last few episodes. A huge thank you for that. Next, we have a post from the great Zlofsky, actually from a little while back. Back in February, there was this topic of the Radahn Festival and all the characters within that, and a lot of different supplemental data that came from that. Zlofsky's a great creator that I've mentioned on the series a few times now, who highlights things that you can find in game, but you're just not able to really see unless you pause time and have a free moving camera. Things like this let us really take a look at the reality of things. This faction with the Radahn Festival is really interesting, and this incredible kind of cutout of Radahn's horrible, pretty intense face. Most of the time enemies are masked or visored and you can't see their face during a fight like this, but to get this cutout you can see how pretty horrible looking zombie-like this Radahn truly is. Now, of course, there are many people involved, say the many people you summon and where they come from, how they're involved, and a nice look at those characters. But it's the supplemental data that I want to look at, where we actually can see Leonard, you know, Radahn's horse. Like, the sheer size of Leonard compared to Torrent is insane. I think when you're fighting Radahn, you can look at the little horse and maybe barely even notice it because it's tiny compared to him. But it's not until you really stop and see a comparison like this that you realize just how massive that horse actually was. It might be a bit gangly and, you know, he does all this stuff to make himself weigh nothing to be able to ride his favorite horse, which is all nice lore. But it was a massive, massive horse. It did grow with him pretty impressively. I wonder if he did anything to make it grow along with himself. Compared to, say, his siblings, Radahn was a big boy. Maybe it wasn't naturally done. There's the whole aspect of how Radahn has like these stumpy legs rather than any feet. So maybe. Finally, we have a follow-up to the idea of Godwin and his current twisted, fishy form being more of a chimeric aspect, and some interesting theories to do with why that's sort of taking place. Nicholas Taylor was referencing how it's the crucible tree in the roots that could have actually been tied to that. For example, the misbegotten enemies here that we are seeing at various places around the world, but obviously one of the first places you really encounter them is here at Castle Morn. They're actually very chimeric in their design as well. When we look at this lower one at the bottom here, it has some stubby wings that it can use to fly. The larger ones have a much larger tail that you can use as kind of like a whip. How they've become these creatures, though, is obviously an important mystery, one that we can get a little bit of information about from the winged misbegotten ashes. A spirit with the aspect of wings, which takes flight to loose arrows from its bow, the misbegotten are held to be a punishment from making contact with the crucible. So it's thought that their existence is a punishment from making contact with the crucible, and from birth they are treated as slaves or worse by simply being misbegotten. So their form, their shape, the way that they end up being is seemingly attached to making contact with the crucible. If we are led to believe that concept, then someone thought it anyway, then if this is indeed the crucible tree and how it's become the Erdtree, well, by making physical contact with the roots, maybe that is what's literally transforming our Godwin here into this strange chimeric creature. There's this theme with remembrances, and we see it even in one of the cinematics before you fight Horaloo, where kind of like the soul and essence of someone returns to the Erdtree. If you're unaware, this is why at the end of any catacomb that you find, you will actually find roots that likely lead to the Erdtree, or rather the crucible tree as it once was, and that's why there's all these bodies and such piled up within it. They are being physically buried within the tree, within the roots, as a way to let them move on, let them return to the Erdtree. It's interesting how it became a more soul-like version with the remembrances, and interesting how they seem to have returned to the practice when stumped by what to do with Godwin's body, with it not returning as it's supposed to. So again, I'd like to thank Nicholas Taylor for that theory. I really like it. But there you have it, another episode down, and some interesting lore stuff to talk about. Let me know what you think about what's going on with the Godskins and the whole sleep thing, the lore theory to do with this chimeric theme with, of course, Godwin and the misbegotten. Surely we've discovered and talked about everything possible with Miquella and the Erdtree and the divine Erdtree, if that's what it is, but let me know what you think. As always, this series basically survives on our back and forth and things that you suggest, so if there's anything that you think can be in the series that hasn't been so far, things that most people don't know or interesting details, then drop in the comments and we might just include it. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.